Vice Chair of York and North Yorkshire on for RailEI on that. Okay, I'm better move over slightly. So, talk about Hopetown, Darlington. Why the scheme was happening or has happened, and how we progressed it. So, I better talk about who I am first. So, career railwayman, started in the Permanent Way Design Office of the Regional Civil Engineers in York back in 1991. Worked for CDG, which became British Steel, Jacobs, AECOM, Mott McDonald's, and I've been my own limited company now for about 13 or 14 years, working on various projects, which for the last 10 years has been Transpennine Route Upgrade, which is my current employment. So, Darlington. All the works at Darlington in relation to the new museum at Hopetown, Darlington. So that is the main entrance, the flash new entrance to Hopetown. How do I? Okay, the message is coming up on screen. So that's the main entrance. So as part of the works, it's quite easy with the numbers on there. So number 5 is Darlington North Road Station. So Banktop Station, well, 15 on the right-hand side is Skerne Bridge. And if you keep going off the right-hand side of the screen, you curve around and end up at the East Coast Main Line and Banktop Station. But the main site at Darlington North Road, so 5 is the station. 11 is the main entrance to the museum that I've just showed a photo of, which originally held Darlington Railway Preservation Society. Also at the bottom, the 2 and 3 numbers there is the old carriage works, the Stockton and Darlington Railway Carriage Works that housed North Eastern Railway Preservation Group and the A1 Steam Trust, who built Tornado, which is the organisation that I'm semi-representing in this presentation. So, as part of the tens of millions of pounds development for the museum site, all the railway occupants all got evicted as part of those works and relocated. So the A1 Steam Trust moved over the railway to the building mark number 6 there. So a brand new Darlington Locomotive Works, roughly a £5 million portal frame shed building. And DRPS and NELPEG both got moved up into the 1861 shed with the far left-hand side, the building number 22. 1861, no surprise because it was built in 1860. That's just an aerial photo of exactly the same thing. So the museum, the station, the museum towards the bottom right-hand corner. I don't know when my pointer is going to work. The little red-ended building there, that's the A1 Steam Trust, Darlington Locomotive Works. The 1861 shed, third of the way from the left, and then this is relevant later on, but the old British Steel rolling mills at the far left, and then which is the limit of the site. So there used to be a lot of railways at Darlington North Road. So again, exactly the same location. You've got Darlington North Road Station, the 1861 shed, and then the old locomotive works, which are no longer there. That's a supermarket, Morrison's, and some other wholesale locations. So the old site did have a little bit of permanent way. So that's the old carriage works. It connected into both ends of that shed, and they had about a quarter of a mile of track, not an awful lot. But they were internally rail connected, but not connected to the mainline network. Got 2 brand new sheds. So those are the inside of the Darlington Locomotive Works on the left-hand side, and the inside of the 1861 shed on the right-hand side. The 2 flash new buildings, refurbished, one new, one refurbished to house all the railway organisations in the area. So how did I get involved? The track design was originally being provided by AECOM. The concept, which I'll show you in a minute, was reviewed and identified that it wouldn't actually fit in the way that it was drawn. So a chap called Graham Bunker, who works on ECDP now, gave me a call, sent me an email and said, can I have a second opinion, please? So everything that was in the AECOM email was absolutely correct. The layout was designed by an architect with 120 metre radii and S&C 120 degrees. Doesn't exist. It's a heavy rail in this country. What he didn't say is what you could do. So hence the challenge. So for my sins, jump straight in with both feet. 22 versions of the design later, and 2 years of delivery. I've been rather involved. So what we were working towards, the Rail 200 celebrations were September of 25, last September. So that was an absolute drop dead date for finishing a bare minimum of the internal yard layout and also the network connection, because as part of the anniversary run, the locomotion number 1 replica stopped off at Darlington Loco Works overnight and then continued its journey on the second day. That's a line diagram version of the original concept. Looking the opposite way around to the photos I showed you a minute ago, because railways always have 0 miles on the left-hand side, so we swapped it round to railway speak as such. So we've got the A1 steam trust at the far left-hand end, 2 tracks coming into 1, passive provision for a turntable, over Otley Terrace Bridge, splitting with 2 through lines, so the ability to have a stabling line and a through line, and you can run around at that location, connecting to both ends of the 1861 shed. A spur up at the top end, so a head shunt going up to Elm Tree Street, and then connecting back in to a network connection, which is far more easily seen on the next slide. So what were the challenges? The architect's I've already said, the architect's concept utilised 120 metre radius all over the place. We had S&C located on top of Otley Terrace Bridge. The entire site is quite constrained and radii anyway. Gradients, which I'll explain. And the fact that we didn't have any of the track materials. So unlike a normal design where you design what you want, then go and procure the materials, the reason there's been 22 versions of the design is every time we work out what materials we can get, we had to make the design fit around the S&C that we're actually able to get our hands on. So that's a single line scale single line diagram version of the final design. So I mentioned the network connection. So the top line there is the up down Bishop Auckland. There's Hopetown Junction in the middle. There's a crossover there. To the left of that is the goods loop that goes past North Road Station. And the bit to the right of the crossover is currently what was previously a spur siding. So that's Darlington North Road through siding, although it's named differently in Quayle, the section appendix, signalling plan, you name it, it's got a different allocation. But we're basically taking the buffer stop out and connecting into that to create the network connection. A stretched version because it'll be easier to see. Mention key features. But the main buildings, obviously the buildings, we have to connect into the buildings. The orange elements are the bits of the track that were already built as part of the refurbishment works. Otley Terrace is a challenge. Network rail boundary is another big challenge. So where did a land transfer between Network Rail and the council, because all this land was previously Network Rail. The land boundary transfer didn't pay a lot of heed to where the cable route was through the site at the moment, and had the Network Rail cable route on what would have been council land. So every time we kept finding the buried evidence of the buried cable route, the fence line kept moving. So the design kept moving with it. And then the constrained radii, so a curved site, and we need to get from the passive provision for the turntable bottom left to a loading spur, which is just to the bottom left-hand side of the 1861 shed. So the pivotal part of all of that design is 1 radius all the way through there, which only just fits, and then everything else is right through that point. Mentioned Otley Terrace, that's what the site looked like in, it has a date on there, around about the 1940s. So Otley Terrace originally had 9 tracks going over the bridge. Network Rail currently use those 2 on the right-hand side. And we're looking to reinstate something like that, with a constant curve running over a straight way-beam bridge. And that's the extract of the design, trying to fit over the bridge, and then a 3D extract at the bottom with the way-beam bridge right at the very bottom of the diagram. The bridge itself is a challenge. So straight way beams, putting a 180 metre, or it's 180 metre transition to straight, but quite a tight curve over the way beams. Straight way beams, curved track. because for the proximity to the S&C at the right-hand end, we kept the truck and S&C at the other end, one panel off the end of the bridge. We kept the track vertical across the bridge. Not only was it too difficult to put twist rails in and go to incline and then back again, we're cheap because the V base plate can go either way around. So as you transition and slew across from one side of the way beam to the other, all the bold way beam, all the bold pan V plates are the ones that are the wrong way around, with the single screw on the running edge side, and the lighter weight ones are all the proper way around. For those that know, you can put them either way. It's just the preference is to have the two screws on the running edge side. So that's how we manage the geometry over the bridge without keeping your AS chair screw holes at least 50 millimetres from the edge of the way beam.
Can we ask questions as you go?
Yeah. I'll have to be really quick on.
What just the length of the way beams? What was?
There were two each, and they were approximately 7 metres long, slightly under 7 metres.
And these were new ones you installed?
I'll get some photos later.
Okay.
So Regional Civil Engineer Permanent Way Department used to get called the Flat Earth Society by the area because they didn't bother putting long sections on their renewals drawings. So we had something similar here. The architect for the A1 shed made it easy for his design and made the levels of the shed fit the car park, which fitted the highway at the left hand there. So the main running lines are on approximately 1 in 125 gradient, rising from left to right. So if you make the end of the car park level with the running rails at the far left hand end, by the time you get to the other end of the shed, you're 1 metre below the adjacent running lines. And 70 metres away, you've got Otley Terrace Bridge, which obviously everything is at the same level as the adjacent running lines. So we've now got 1 metre and some to make up. So it's 1.8 metres to make up in 70 metres. So you end up with a siding with a 1 in 57 gradient. 1861 shed, similar. The north end of the shed was level with the adjacent running lines. The south end of the shed, as you can see on the OS map on the right hand side, never had the railway lines coming out of the south end of the shed. That was the vehicular access in for unloading goods vehicles. So the refurb broke through the wall and put tracks out both ends of the shed. So we've got the same thing. We are now 800 mil above the running lines at the south end of the shed. So we've got those elevations to lose also. So the lung section looks something like this. So A1 shed, far left-hand end at the end of the route. The black dotted line is the approximate adjacent running lines, just to show what they're doing. So we come out of the A1 shed, level grade for approximately 25 metres, then start a 1 in 57 gradient to get you over Otley Terrace Bridge. As soon as you get over the bridge, we flatten off to a 1 in 74 that runs all the way up to 25 metres short of the 1861 shed. Through line, once you get past the S&C, doesn't need that, so it slackens off a little bit sooner. But we're now putting a platform on one of the lines as well, so that we wanted that on level grade as well. So you've got another intermediate step within the long section design. So not only is that challenging from a gradient perspective, obviously we've kept 25 metres, basically only stable 25 metres outside any of the sheds. Or on the flatter, longer through line. So gradients are a bit of a challenge. So you've got a flat way beam deck, bridge deck with the way beams. So not only are we curving over the bridge, we've got a 1 in 57 gradient going over a level deck. So you can see at the near end, the top of the rail is level with the bridge deck, and at the far end, the way beam is level with the bridge deck. So there's approximately 170 mil level difference over the length of the bridge. Track materials, next thing. This is Ben's going to have to chip in with some comments in here. So there were a lot of materials that were procured before we started any of the work. So primarily 1400 concrete sleepers from East Coast Mainline Renewals, I think somewhere originally. Yeah. Roughly 300 hardwood sleepers that came from the Nexus renewal. There were actually 600, but 300 went to the Wensleydale or Weardale, I can't remember which, and the other 300 came to Darlington. We got auction purchased approximately 260-foot lengths, a flat bottom rail from Northumberland Line Works that have just completed. We've got one crossover from Marching House, a CV 9 1/4 crossover on the Northumberland line again. We've got 2 BV8 turnouts from Darling upsidings remodelling recently. Steel work from 2 turnouts, again from Darling remodelling. We've got a BV switch, 2 BV switches from Huddersfield, first blockade last September. A load of bullhead S&C and plain line from Balby Mines, which the RPS managed to secure. We've got a few more concrete sleepers from the leftovers from recent S&C renewal at Eaglescliff, and yet more turnouts and plain line from what was removed from the old carriage work. So what were the A1 Steam Trust and Nelpeg already on. So sleepers are a challenge. So plain line renewal at Ferry Hill. Those sleepers all got stored and ready to be collected at Tersdale. That's the photo of them on the left-hand side and where they're located on the old Leamside branch spur. So we can't remember whether we got as far as turning up on site, but we turned up on site to collect them, and they had all gone. So roughly 800 tonnes of materials were all stolen. Concrete sleepers with rails on them, so it's about 800 tonnes worth of materials.
With people in a high over a number of weeks with false plates and oranges on.
And that's where the road train used to be stored as well.
So I think Ben then got involved in trying to.
I'd unfortunately sold them to you, so they were your property, but on that were land. So I did feel compelled to find an alternative. So
we did end up getting an alternative, and I can't remember where these came from, but that's the delivered version at Darlington.
They were non-serviceable sleepers that were substandard from an LDC, somewhere, a local distribution centre somewhere else in the country that were looking for some.
And there were some horrible ones in there.
So we said, I think in the end we did a deal around transport cost. You were paying the transport and sleepers were provided.
So predominantly a mix of F27 and F23s, which we'll see the impacts of that shortly. As you can see on the second pile, there's some very heavy galling on some of the sleepers. So there was, I'd say, approximately 5% of wastage. We tend to put up with poor sleepers, but the really, really bad ones got utilised for non-track purposes. Next, sleepers turning up, not stacked particularly neatly in a big pile on the right-hand side. Interesting that we're unloading with trains moving on the adjacent line. Rails turned up, all nicely, neatly stacked. And then the groundworks contractor, when he got that far up the site, decided they were in the way, and they decided to move them off his own bat, and that's what we ended up with. We are absolutely livid when that happened. How do you safely extract rails from there? You can't get a rail grab on any of those. So it took us 4 weeks, some very, very long days running into the night, to pull them all out and restack them. And we stacked them all 1 layer thick for a very good reason. We need to then go and measure all the rails for where and work out where we're putting them. So the joys or challenges of using serviceable materials, particularly rails. So we had roughly 200 rails. They were all different rail sections, all flat bottom, but all different rail sections. They're all different lengths, anywhere from 14 to 20 metres, or even 21 metres in length. They all had different headwear, sidewear, and lipping. And when they were extracted from track, nobody made any effort to try and cut them near a weld. They just cut them in 20-metre lengths, which meant approximately 20 metres. The rails had less than 4.5 metres from a weld to the end of the rail, which we didn't ignore, but we generally went to 5 sleepers from weld to fish plate. There are a couple of locations because we literally couldn't afford the wastage, where we were down to 3 sleepers between a weld and a fish plated joint. But given that everything's 5 miles an hour, it was an acceptable risk. I mentioned different rail sections, so we've got £113, £110, £109. And then I try and put my railway gauge on the red version there, and showing my insular protected life of the regional civil engineers is I'd never ever seen a £98 flat bottom rail before, which obviously everyone in the area has. But 30 years in the industry, and I'd never seen a 145mm high flat bottom rail, which they obviously weren't that because they all had about 10mm wear, so they were even smaller. So we didn't use any of the £98 rail. They are currently stored on site, 20 of them, which may be getting used by Hull DU because they still have loads of £98 rail. So they may be coming up to relievers of rails at some point. So massive inventory. I won't explain most of the numbers on there, but the two interesting ones are the two arrowed columns, the rail wear at each end of the rails. So given that a pair of ordinary straight ordinary fish plated joints cost about 50 quid a pair, and a set of lift plates cost anywhere from 250 to 450 quid, the charity couldn't afford to be putting lift plates everywhere. So we had a massive jigsaw of try and work out how you put what came out of the Northumberland line back together the way it came out. So match all the railways back together again. So that took me weeks to come up with that. And
Have you heard of shims? I mean, joint.
shims don't take out 6mm though very easily. So what we've got, well, we have numbered all the rails so that we, apart from one location that I got wrong, we haven't got more than not more than 1mm step at any of the fish plated joints. Normally for 0.5 millimetre. So we haven't done it yet, but we are planning on going and shimming the ones, anything that's above 1mm. And given it's been run over now for 9 months, it's a bit late to be shimming the ones that. So not only do we need to match the railways, how do we put rails together that are made up of multiple short lengths of short lengths of different rail welded together. So every panel that we put in on site had a little diagram to try and work out how you can arrange them and still get sensible sleeper spacings and cut them into panel lengths. And you end up with lots of odd panel lengths. So that panel is a 17/820 panel, and every single panel on the site is a subtly different size. And we did get a survey. We didn't have to purchase this. So everything we're talking about here is how to do everything either very cheaply or free because it's a charity and it's all working on donations. Luckily, the council for the groundworks paid for the topographical survey. So the first version of the topo survey, the council paid for. In fact, the first two versions, because they went to an external non-railway contractor who produced a rather rubbish, not fit for purpose design survey. So PBH Rail in York went out and resurveyed it all. And we did something not necessarily clever, but something I've never done before. So this is the second version, which they did for us for free. We went and surveyed every fence post. So the security fence, the palisade fence had been installed before the works, nominally following the proposed geometry of the railway within 1 to 2 metres. So I made a little jig there, which would fit on the bottom rail of the palisade fence. And every fence post, we surveyed an accurate location. So every 2.7 metres all the way through the site, we had an accurate coordinate for every fence post. Because we had an accurate coordinate, I could measure off the design offset from the proposed alignment to every fence post. So I had an offset to every fence post. That became our setting out, our horizontal setting out. So levels were done with a dumpy level. Horizontal was all by offsets and triangulation from fence posts. And we had those all the way through.
See, I've not been posting trouble.
It worked really, really, really well. So we set out some very long straights. The longest straight was about 300 metres. We put a theodolite on it at the end, and we were within 25 mil entire length of the straight. And that was that straight, actually. So it'd be nice if we were putting the track this side of the fence, but the track was actually going the opposite side of the fence. So anything to get noticed as part of surveys. So if you stand in the wrong place when you're doing a point cloud survey, so that was Otley Terrace Bridge, that's me getting point clouded. I also got picked up on the Google Street View walking through the site. And then anything to get noticed, we were just messing around with faster ways of doing levelling and moving around. So obviously we didn't actually do that. So hopefully this is the story of Darlington in roughly chronological order. So we've got a set of staging diagrams just showing what we built in what order. So we started off at the far south end. We planned on getting everything finished to the left or to the south of Otley Terrace Bridge. So the first S&C that we were planning on using was the crossover that came out from March's house. So we turned that into two 2 turnouts, even though it has a parallel wing crossing on it. Went with a short spur of extra extended check on the turnout leg in each instance, which looks a bit rubbish, but it's functionally fine. And again, beggars can't be choosers. If that's the crossing you get, that's the crossing you use. That's the collection from the compound at TT Electronics at Bedlington. Bedlington, sorry, apologies.
It's Bedlington.
Bedlington. Bedlington is the St. Stephen's holiday, that's why I'm probably allowed it. So 2 crossings, 2 sets of switches, 2 sets of check rails. Got some extra crossings on the left-hand side. The middle one, obviously, not a lot of use because it'd been cut so short on the V rails, it wasn't usable. And quite annoyingly, a very nice part welded 1 in 10 crossing came without its base plates. So that hasn't actually been used yet, but we have sourced some plates to use that at some point. So plenty of planning. That's the pre-site planning. So in the middle there, so it's me on the right-hand side, the chairman of the Air1 Steam Trust on the left, it's Steve Davies, formerly the National Railway Museum. The 2 people in the middle are Captain Sophie Martin and Major James Appleby, who are from 507, so the Royal Engineer Volunteers, so 507th Specialist Team Railway Engineers, STRE. I always forget what the acronym is. So plenty of pre-planning. We'd intended. Sorry, why are they there? So the Strategic Reserve have training weekends where people come from all over the country. So they are all volunteers, roughly 30 people within 507th. They're based at Kyneton, just near Warwick, the MOD site. But the volunteers come all from all over the country, from Glasgow, Cumbria, 1 from Cornwall, there's quite a few from London. So Darlington is actually a reasonably central site. And we were able to provide them a decent training activity. So obviously we were getting track built, but we made 2 great efforts all the way through the 3 visits they made to make sure it was a valid training activity for them, not just as abusing them as free labour. So planning for the first weekend, they were planning coming up in October of 2023. So for the first track laying activity, plan was get the plant there midweek, get the bottom ballast down, get it levelled. Well, so plant with two techies, 2 operators, sorry, get all the bottom ballast in, and then over the weekend get 6 plain line panels and 1 turnout installed. So the plant turned up on time. Unfortunately, the council, so the Wednesday we were due to start laying ballast, the 3 days before on the Monday, the council still hadn't let the groundworks contract to Thompson's of Prudhoe. So that was they started on site the day that we were supposed to start laying ballast, doing the formation. They managed to complete it in 2.5 days. Well, managed to do something in 2.5 days, but it wasn't complete. So we took over. We were supposed to get it on Wednesday morning. We got it on Friday lunchtime, and it was incomplete. So we actually spent the rest of Friday afternoon getting the formation to the correct levels because it was high in quite a few places. Which meant we had no time to do anything properly. So we made the silly choice to just chuck a nominal 4 inches of ballast in, just to allow us to get on and lay something. So we had 30 people on site with nothing to do. They're not going to want to stand there and watch 1 plant operator level ballast for a whole day. Really, really bad decision. And we'll see why in a few minutes. But just lay a nominal layer of ballast so they could get started. However, the switches that came from Archie House that we were trying to use for the turnout that we're going to lay 50 metres or 70 metres of the track were adjacent to the plain line we're about to put in. So that isn't where they were supposed to get delivered. I wasn't there when I was there when we collected from Northumberland, but I wasn't there when they delivered it to site, and they just dumped it at the most convenient location. So as soon as we start, we realised logistics, we need to get in there to lift those rails out. So that wasted another hour and a half, shifting the switch panels, half sets of switches out of that location before the guys could get back in and start laying plain line again, which they then cracked on with doing. So planned on 6 panels. We ended up installing 3 panels and barely getting any S&C other than just putting some bearers down and plonking some rails on top of it. And the levels were all over the place. So interestingly, we had to get permission from the council, a engineering work site, the opposite of high vis. They're trying to do a training activity for working in the field, although we at least didn't have the locals shooting at them while we were doing the work, but we tried to make it reasonably realistic in that they were in their camouflage while they were working. So we needed special permission from the landowner, Darlington Borough Council, for us to actually work without high vis. So at least once the contract was let for the groundworks, the elements to the other side of Otley Terrace Bridge to the north actually progressed at quite a pace, and the next phase got completed fairly quickly. So I'll talk about formation in a moment, but this area was actually made up. There's quite a lot of Type 1 laid and compacted to get the elevations to the correct level. At the opposite end of the site, it was the opposite because we were coming out of the shed level and then starting to climb up. We're doing quite a lot of excavation. So I just remembered I forgot to put a couple of slides in here, but how we managed formation stiffness. So the obviously sidings were originally laid in clinker and ash. So you had an organic layer. We had roughly a foot of ash on top of a silty clay. So ash, without the water being able to percolate underneath, doesn't coat very well when it gets wet. Most of it actually worked fairly well, but in essence, the strategy for checking the stiffness of the formation is take off the organic layer, compact it, let it rain, drive a heavy truck or plant over the top of it. If it ruts, it's soft. If it stays where it is, it's good enough. So basically went through and did that. Anywhere that was soft, we excavated 100 millimetres and put 100 mil of Type 1 down. And there was one location where that still didn't work and it was horrendous. So we ended up taking 300 mil out for about a 20 metre length and having a third go in that area. So a rather empirical method of attempting to get your formation stiff.
No positive drainage.
Yet. So at least we are planning on putting bottom ballast. So does anyone know where that is? Certain preservation line.
It's Kirby Stephen.
It is Kirby Stephen. So Kirby Stephen are laying the sleepers directly on the ground and then putting topstone on to hide the fact that they aren't putting any ballast in. So from all the photos I've seen over the years, that what's happening on the left-hand side is pretty much what they've done everywhere. So I don't really see the point in putting stone on if there isn't any underneath the sleepers, but I'm not quite sure how to do that. So we are putting ballast in. We are using limestone ballast. So we're using limestone ballast because the cost of granite has gone through the roof. So in the last 5 years, it's gone from £11 a tonne to something like £33 a tonne plus delivery. So you're talking about £45 to £50 a tonne. We've got locally sourced limestone ballast to size spec for normal railway ballast for £23 a tonne delivered from a local quarry. So given it's a 5 mile an hour siding, it doesn't have as long a lifespan as granite ballast, but it's good enough for a siding. And actually using they use limestone for ballast in North America in quite a few locations. So it's good enough for them, it's good enough for us. So, and it looks a lot better. So the right hand side there, the first layer of ballast was recycled granite ballast, and then the limestone on top. It's lovely and white compared to what we normally use, which we have had some dark grey, and we also had some pink granite that the council procured for one part that they were responsible for. So the formation was all done by Thompson's of Prudhoe. They finished a day early, so we persuaded them to lay our bottom ballast for us, and Graham, who was in the dozer there, was absolutely exceptional at getting an 8-inch layer of ballast by eye without a laser level or a GPS dozer. There were only relatively short lengths that I had to go back and get him to redo, which my name was Mud after that. So amazing how quickly he could get the ballast. So basically the trucks were coming in, tipping the ballast, and he was immediately spreading out as we went. And then I was there with my level checking as we went along. So 200 mil of ballast, bottom ballast all the way through, 300 metre length, did that whole lot in one day, all by eye. And there was, after he'd finished, there was one bit which is a photo of in a moment where I had to go back. It was still about 25 to 50 mil high, which we had to go back with a JCB and drag that out. But the dozer driver, we didn't know his name at first, and the other lads on site were scared of him. He was rather a hard nut, and they all thought he sounded just like Oz from Alvida's Own Pet, so everyone was calling him Oz for ages. And it was rather a tough nut. I was the only one that had to say, no, we need to do it again, we need to do it again. Nobody else would say that. So he wasn't very pleased with me. So after that weekend, the lads at DRPS pulled together a little video, which it includes swearing, so I apologise in advance. But the fact I was saying up a bit, down a bit, or up an inch, down an inch, he eventually got a bit annoyed at me. So this is the spoof video that knocked together.
Is that one of your chaps, Hopetown?
No, could be one of those animal rights activists.
Oz, I never imagined this was your sport.
No, doping whippets is more my lane, eh?
Seriously, what are you doing here? You could have got yourself killed.
You promised me an answer.
As I said, we're still talking.
But you've not been talking to me,
James.
I've left messages on your machine at your office with Sarah.
Terry.
Now, I want to know, and I want to know now. Is this
Ballast
Malaysian
levels.
Well, the indications are...
Yes or no?
Yes!
Yeah.
You've screwed us, James, haven't you?
Ah, you sucked us in, and then you hung us out to dry.
Why don't you point that somewhere else? It's loaded!
Oh, really?
Everything all right over there?
Shut your mouth, twat!
So they're a good set of lads at Darlington, but we always had a good crack like that all the time and taking the mickey out of each other. So it's actually a breath of fresh air, because you do have to be quite politically correct in network rail now, whereas that was proper old school, just ripping the shit out of everyone constantly all the way through. So dust was a problem at Darlington, but not necessarily because the limestone ballast. So limestone is far more dusty than granite. So we did have a bit of dust from the ballast. The main problem was the ash. So hot dry summers, get a windy day, the ash in the air flying around, and you got the dust devils going on all over the place. It was absolutely horrible. If you had a full day on site, we should have really been wearing respirators. And on the really bad days, I was, because it was hard work. You really knew about it. And the inside of everyone's car was black. So we're all on site in our own cars, and just from opening the door and shutting them through the day, getting in and out, just a layer of rubbish on the inside of the car. So next stage. This was the next visit. So September of 23, there was the first visit from the 507th. They returned again 6 months later, or 7 months later, July of 24. So apart from continuing building the turnout south of Otley Terrace, we hadn't got an awful lot finished in that time frame. They came back to do the little bit of plain line next to the 1861 shed, and they turn out up at the right hand end, which forms the network connection. So over that 6 months, we cracked on again the turnout pulled together. And you see this gazebo quite a lot in a lot of the photos. So we had a very, very hot summer, and a lot of the slightly overweight lads struggled with the heat. So we were often working and literally moving the gazebo around with us as we did as we worked during the day. So that's the guys pulling the S&C together. So we started this turnout, and it got to that point, and it pretty much stayed like that for another 18 months. So it was the first turnout we finished, and it started, and it was the last one we finished. Because we were south of Otley Terrace, and getting the way beams on Otley Terrace was one of the last things we did, it wasn't needed to run trains on. So we ended up flitting around to whichever was the easiest part of the site to work on. And as you see on there, the levels are all over the place. So I said about I really regret just chucking it on a nominal layer of ballast. We ended up having to lift it about 5 or 6 inches. So you can see the S&C lifted off the ground on the right hand side. And we're basically just bringing trolleys of ballast up and shoveling it underneath the track. And then at the right hand side, you can see Ken there standing between the sleepers, how high we're actually lifting it, because the top of the sleeper was at knee level. average age of the workers. So there was various different groups on site. So Darlington Railway Preservation Society, generally a younger crowd there, are mostly in their 30s. But all the A1 Steam Trust volunteers are generally in the 70s. They're all retired. So the average age, I brought the average age down in that left-hand photo. I think it was only about 70 instead of 75 to 80. But they cracked on with a will, and they put the younger ones to shame sometimes because they just kept going. So the weekend where STRE came up, 507 came up, so we planned it a little bit better this time. So another pre-prep activity, an S&C, and so second-hand hardwood bearers came up. We need to plug them all, so advanced weekend going through and plugging all the bearers so that they could be ready to lay on site. Removing all the S&C from the old carriage works. Again, whatever plant was available. So instead of using a 360, we tend to use a telehandler for a lot of the removals, and we had more operators that were capable of using a telehandler as well. So task brief for 507th when they turned up. So they cracked on with laying plain line, and you can just about see there the mix of the slopey F23 end sleepers and the F27s. They put very little heed into what order they put them in, so you pretty much at one point had alternate sleepers, which was a trip hazard nightmare once the track was finished. So if you track walking, you're walking on your sleeper ends. So I'll come back to how we rectified that in a moment. So that was one whinge. Next one was, can we see anything wrong with those two joints? Anyone? Let me put a straight line on it for you. It's about 75 mil out of square, and then they just skewed the sleepers to match the out of square joint they put in. So obviously we couldn't do much other than take the whole rails out and cut them shorter. So we made sure at least squared the sleepers up and positioned them around the staggered joint. So we've got the majority of the S&C in. So the network connection, the gate on the right-hand side in the distance, it eventually forms the network connection. So that's the turnout that goes out onto network rail, and the left-hand leg goes through the site. So the other team, one team was doing the plain line, the other team was putting the S&C in, which was great. Turning a straight right-hand turnout straight onto a flat curve, that wasn't actually too difficult. But unfortunately, the QA on that wasn't brilliant either, because there were 10 to 12 mil wide on the through leg for the gauge. So once the left, we pretty much took out half of it out, plugged it, and put it back in again. So that's us reinstalling turnout. So soul destroying, because spot the difference. It was about 3 weeks work to get it from the left-hand version to the right-hand version. And although the only thing you can pretty much see on the photo is the geometry on the far right-hand rail is a little bit better, but it's just correcting the gauge. So it's a bit soul destroying doing rework. Critical rail temperatures. We've got a different version of critical rail temperatures on our site. If it's too hot to sit on, you don't sit on it. You have to go in your car for your brake in the air conditioning. So we try and have plenty of brakes under the gazebo, but if that rail is too hot, it's not particularly comfortable. So that's our version of recuperation and cooling down. Everyone back in the car.
Looks like Warren.
That is Warren.
Right.
He lasted 2 days and we managed to kill him, and he never came back after that. So Warren Bain is a York-based OLE engineer as well that did
ABH works for them. Yeah.
Yes, director of PBH Rail. So it wasn't all hard work. We did get to stop. So the gazebo got put to multiple uses. Keeping my car cool was one of them. So I had a mobile sunshade. So we did get a rest occasionally. And I didn't even let the lads rest on the odd occasion. We got to sit down.
It's like that planking stuff.
That was the way beams. No, you mentioned way beams. FFU way beams. So groundworks and anything to do with Otley Terrace Bridge. I persuaded the council that the way beams were actually their responsibility. So they purchased four new way beams for us from Japan. They were actually cheaper and quicker delivery than getting the hardwood versions.
These plastic ones?
Plastic.
Wow. Right. Well, they're tapered.
No, they're not. They look tapered.
No.
We just installed them on a grading, which I'll show you how we did that shortly. So what next? Right, the first of the turnouts from Darlington up sidings. These go to my line, so that's the little bit of ballast that was wrong, so I had to go back and Correct that. So we were exceedingly lucky that the designer for Darlington up sidings didn't remodel the sidings and didn't reuse the turnouts that were there. They were less than 5 years old and had about 1 millimetre of rail wear, and they were all going off the scrap. But with the assistance of Mr. Brooks again and others, for help from CRSA, we managed to get them to take them out in panels and put them to one side for us. So we in essence got a right hand and a left hand BV8 that were almost brand new in panels. So they got put to one side. We had to strip some of the bearers out to get the lift light enough for the what the tracked PEMLEM's called. I forgot what they call them. Anyway, how they were taking them out, they had to reduce the weight, so they had to take some bearers out there. So, but we at least marked them before they took them out, so they were easy to put that together. So corners came along. It got full crossing panels with, what's the length of the bearer? 5.7 metre bearer, right? Roughly the last through bearer. Laid flat on a truck, so wide load going through the middle of Darlington. It was only about 1.5 miles, but through the middle of Darlington in rush hour, blocking the roads as we go. So that the right hand photo is from the escort vehicle at the back. So that was interesting, taking full unit. So why we bother with tilting wagons? Let's just go for a wide load up the M1 to our side. And that's us reinstalling it again. So the panels just put in turn. That was an hour's work to get to the right hand side, and then another day's work to put all the bearers back in. So here, presto, we've got an instant turnout. So compared to the turnout south of Otley Terrace, which took us nearly 2 years to build, that one was in 2 days to its final position. Again, set out to the fence posts. So triangulating off 3 fence posts for the chainage position, because every one of the fence posts, not only did it have a coordinate, it had a chainage as well, which was very handy when you were doing it. You knew exactly where you were in the site.
Look at those fence posts didn't move.
A couple of them did when they got hit, but I've got no photos. So I had a bit of a midlife crisis at one point. So the wife wasn't too bothered about me buying a big flash new motorbike, but what she didn't know for quite a while is that I bought myself another birthday present, 28-ton road railer from Cratchrow. So that was my 53rd birthday present to myself. It got to the point where how much did I value my time? It is so slow trying to build anything without the correct plan. So we were using a JCB, 3CX JCB, which has a very limited reach and limited lifting capacity. And we didn't have that full time. We had it one day a week. So in the end, I just bit the bullet, bought from a local company that buys them at auction and then sells them on. So it was a reasonable price, but Quattro, when they sell on their machines, take the computers out of them and put a box standard computer in, which, although that worked, was demonstrated to work wonderfully in the yard, wouldn't work in rail mode. So we ended up having to spend about £3,000 to have a new bespoke computer put in and have the entire machine set up with all the safety limits set properly. So in the end, it's a good machine. It's got about 250,000 hours on it. So it's an oldish machine, but it's done pretty well. It's lost its bust hydraulic hoses about 3 times in 18 months, but apart from the computer, we've had no really major issue yet. There's no wood to touch. So rain, Dave, thank you for mentioning drainage. Rain is an issue, or was an issue. So we had a really dry summer, and then in September it went absolutely mental. So that's the formation of the second line. So we've got one line laid, that's the formation of the second line, which was literally a river. Partly because there's no drainage, and partly because there was a third-party drainage system from the old steelworks outfalling onto our site, and it was contaminated. So the middle left photograph there, there's quite a lot of oil in there. So that was actually after the flow reduced a little bit. It was pretty much pressure washer time with the amount of water that was coming out of that pipe. So the council forced the owners of the old rolling mills to have their drainage moved, which meant digging up about a 200 metre length for the road and re-diverting their drain. But that got moved, which made a huge difference to the site. But we had to get drainage put in. So where we've got the 2 tracks through the middle of the site, the council, again, groundworks, council's responsibility. We offered to do it for them if they paid for the materials, but they wouldn't do that, and they got a contractor to come in and do it, who did it wrong, which I'll explain why in a moment. But a 10-foot drain in there, well, it was actually an 8-foot drain. Those tracks are supposed to be an 8-foot track interval for the fact that there's 2 sidings there. So 6-foot drain, B1 there to the right was a drain. The bottom was an open ditch, which we are going to infill with a pipe at some point reasonably soon, because it's rather a tripping hazard to walk across the site. So the right-hand side is the contractor. They didn't have a sensible size bucket, so the trench they dug was about 1 metre wide. They thought it was a little bit too difficult putting the pipe close to the track we'd installed, so they unilaterally decided to move it 300 mil further away because it was easier, which meant it was nowhere near in the middle of the 8-foot we had. So we now got 10 foot, so we had to move the track over. So we've now had to buy loads of extra ballast. We've now got less clearance to the 1861 shed, all because the council got I won't say rubbish contractor, but a non-railway contractor in. So they should have let us do it because we'd have done a better job and put it in the right place. That's the open ditch at the north end of the site, as you can see. So that's before he got an outfall, before they put the drain in. So you can see the catch fits through the site. You can see that's quite a long way from the right-hand track. It was supposed to be about 300 mil off sleeper ends, all those chambers, but they weren't. As I mentioned, we've had to move the next track over to the left, which means we've got relatively limited clearance to the shed as a result of that. Very large chambers. We left them nice, high and proud. We didn't cut them down until we've got our final ballast in. Also thought it'd make it harder for people to drive into. But another army visit, which I'll talk about later on, within 10 minutes of being on site, they managed to drive their JCB into one of the chambers. So we had to dig it all back out and put a new chamber in. Next turnout. So this is the other Marchie House turnout, although we managed to find a better crossing. It's a nice welded cast manganese crossing on there instead of the parallel wing crossing that was came with the switches. And again, you can see the ditch down the right-hand side. So it was wonderful for sorting out the water and the drainage, but it was a bit of a nightmare, particularly when you're trying to put your rubber duck 360 at the other side of the ditch and reach over to lay your rails and whatnot. So it became quite a logistical challenge. And at times we got some steel road plates, and we would often put the road plates over the ditch so we could get a lot closer. So my little whinge. So we got a few concrete sleepers from Eagles Cliff S&C renewals. However, they took out 8 turnouts, or the renewed 8 turnouts. They were all taken out in the possession with care-off crane and lifted out in large panels, so full switch panels, full crossing panels, all put to one side, and they were all almost new. You see it from the right-hand photograph. The bearers are all knackered, but they've been re-railed, new switches, new crossings. They were almost new. There was about 2 millimetres of wear. So I get often in possessions, we cut panels up into really short lengths. It's quick and easy, and time is money. So the value of the materials is far less than the cost of the time. So everything gets cut into 2 to 4 metre lengths and hoiked straight onto a tray. In this instance, they craned them out in full panels, put them to one side. 2 weeks later, went back and cut them up into 2 metre lengths to dispose of them. I was absolutely gutted. Now, we didn't need any of them because they were all DV 10 3/4 turnouts, which was way too big for what we needed. But somebody would have written your arm off for those turnouts. They're all almost new steel work. And if nothing else, we'd have had the Mark II clamp locks off them, so we could have fitted them. But absolutely gutted that they went and trashed all that S&C. So we're then leading up to mention the 507th, which are the volunteers. The Steve Davis that I mentioned earlier, the president of the A1 Steam Trust, is a retired army colonel. And he went to the commanding officer at Catterick Garrison and asked whether we could borrow one of their squads for a month. And he turned around and said yes, which apparently he wasn't supposed to have done, but he did. So we got a full squad of 30 young Royal Engineers from 3-2 Regiment at Catterick came up to help out. So we basically got them to do the snagging from the previous 507 work. So when I mentioned the concrete sleepers, so the mix of the F27s and the F23s. The first job was to go and correct everything that 507 did, just to prove to me if they do it wrong, I will make them go back and do it again. So correcting other people's mistakes was actually quite a good little lesson. The hassle of having to go back and redo it, you put the sleepers in the right place and square to start with, it saves a lot of hassle in the long run. So did a lot of prep, so we got all the bottom ballast tipped, but not levelled in this instance. We didn't have Thompson's to come and do it. We didn't have Oz to come and do his dozer and get it all spot on. So we got the ballast laid out, roughly enough ballast. They're ready for the army when they turned up. So this is a crash course in building track for people that have never seen a railway before. So lots of 20-year-old squaddies. What do we do? What does track look like? So that's the sergeant over on the left-hand side supervising. And that's us trying to give a little crash course. So the first at least half a day, I can't remember whether it was a full day or half a day, but at least half a day was teaching them what to do and walking around site saying, this is a rail, this is a sleeper, literally that basic. So it's amazing what you can do with lots of people. So good old fashioned. It's amazing how quickly you can lay track and move rails when you've got 30, 20-year-old fit squaddies to move the rails for you. Who needs plans? So as we were laying those track panels, another team, we had I can't remember the name of the truck, the high-up truck that they use, basically putting the top stone in, so using their Volvo 360 to tip the top stone. There was another squad, so Pathfinders within their regiment, so the first people into battle, basically. They didn't have the appropriate PPE. They didn't have steel toe cap boots, the same as the engineers did. So they couldn't give any jobs, anything around anything heavy lifting. So they got all the menial task of basically shoveling ballast and cangoing constantly for 3 weeks. They were absolute beasts. They didn't moan once. They were absolutely fantastic. They just got on with it. They did a really, really good job. So because we're having so many people there, we hired in for electrical battery Robel tampers, which were a mixed blessing. They are lighter, so they are horrible. If anyone's been on a Kango or Robel, they kill you back within about half an hour. So they're far easier to use because they're lighter, but because they're lighter, you have to then lean on them to get them to go into the ballast. So there's a big play on it, and the batteries run out relatively quickly. So other electronic elements, we've got electronic rail saw, which is brilliant because it's lighter again, because the rail saw kills you back, but it's approximately 2/3 of the power. It takes ages to get through the rail. It wasn't great. So again, playoffs between modern technology of lighter equipment, but because it's lighter, it doesn't work as well. So plant, because we're next to a gypsy site, we had to be careful where we put the plant. So the rolling mills let us use. So the rolling mills on the right-hand side, in the right-hand photo there, all the plant was going in the rolling mills on the night time. And it actually looked like toys in this massive, massive old rolling mill shed. This big bit of plant looked like toys sat inside. So right photo there was the army levelling and compacting the ballast. They actually went through, they had a little dozer, which you can see in the left-hand photo. They went and had the dozer. I was very explicit of don't dozer it too low and push the ballast out to the sides because you're having a nightmare to get it back. That's exactly what they did. So we then constantly had to drop ballast and with the 360 just drag the ballast back. So do about 5 meters in a go and just drag the ballast towards it, keep putting more ballast in as he went, which meant we also wasted a lot of ballast because it ended up in the drainage ditch off to the sides. So unfortunate. And they were incredibly, incredibly slow. They are not used to working to the accuracies that you need on a railway. They're used to digging a ditch to get a tank across a river or something like that. So they were falling very, very behind. So when they went on a night time, we borrowed the keys and went out and finished it ourselves so they actually could get on with lanes and track the following morning. So that's us about 9 o'clock at night, annoying the neighbours. Laying the ballast, so the following morning we could get the same location, get the sleepers laid out, and they could crack on. So that's the last day on site. That's a lifter slewer that we borrowed from the Llangollen Railway. That was now useless. It was far better just grabbing it with a 360 with a boom and giving it a nudge. Won't be left all right from alongside. But that's the team. So I don't know why that's just done that. We started off with 30 squaddies. We were told we could have them for a month. It's brilliant. We worked out everything we could do with 30 people for a month, for 4 weeks. What we didn't know is that the army work half day Monday and half day Friday, and they've got sports day on Wednesday afternoons. So we actually got them 2.5 days a week. And then on one of the weeks, they also had a work from home Thursday. So that's the army. I hope we never go to war, because they'll only fight 1.5 days in the week. And also we started losing people. So we started with 30, and by the last week we had about 15. So we're definitely not lifting rails at that point. Now, getting those lads to stop doing showing off He-Man mode. So a timber sleeper, hardwood timber sleeper, is a minimum of a 4-man lift. Should really be a 6-man. A concrete sleeper is definitely 6-man. I caught 2 of them carrying a sleeper with base plates. 1 person per sleeper over the shoulder, carrying them up the side. So they got told off. I'm sorry, this keeps jumping to the next slide. So workforce tailed off, and then the final week was the approach to Christmas. So apparently they had to get ready for Christmas as well. So we lost the 4th week, but we got done what we planned to do. They worked like demons. The ones that were there, when they were there, they worked really, really hard. So all the credit there. So next stage, this was my favourite bit: a bullhead tandem turnout. So back to working to the materials that you have available. Some of the materials that came out of Balby Mine was the stuff at the bottom right there. So an old Eastern region, the equivalent of the standard join, P number drawings.
REPW.
Yeah. So a B88 and 5.5 tandem type 1 tandem turnout. When you plot the geometry, I tried to redraw that. I could not get the old REPW to work. There was some right fudges in there. So it actually worked better with a 5 3/4 crossing rather than the 5.5. Find a 5 3/4 crossing at Healy Mills as part of the TRU works for the SCO site they've just put in there. They trashed about 30 really good BV8 bullhead turnouts. I made real effort to get them to put that 5 3/4 crossing to one side for me. They did that, left it to one side for a week, didn't tell me that they put it to one side, and they said, well, you didn't pick it up, so we got rid of it. So it got trashed as well. So we ended up using the 5.5 that we had on site, and I ended up reproducing my own standard drawing to metric, so I could understand how to do it. So that's my standard drawing for a bullhead tandem, and that's us building it up. So timbers laid out, getting the crossings all on in the right place. We pre-cut all the crossings, V-rail and front lengths to make them work. And that's the finished item, although not quite, because the left-hand leg isn't keyed up if you're really eagle-eyed. So that was really enjoyable, but quite a challenge, having never designed or built a bullhead turnout before. So, next one is those switches for the right-hand turnout. You can see there were a right-hand set switch that we tried to turn into a left-hand set switch without a Jim Crow. We nearly got there, but then the switches, the hand lever couldn't operate the switches. So we ended up going halfway house, and it's roughly an equal set now, which does just about work. We couldn't find the right switch, so we made do with what we had. I'm going to have to get moving. So
Check how many slides you've got left.
Quite a lot. 2/3 of the way through. Right, next turnout's coming from Darlington. Level crossing. So network rail access, which is at the top there. So network rail access gate here to go south, network rail access gate to go north. It has to get across the sidings. So we need to put a level crossing in there, or 2 level crossings, one over 2 tracks here and another one which we haven't built yet in there. So as a result, we had to get that absolutely spot on. Because we're putting timbers on top of it, you were not going to be able to tamp it. So in exactly to the right level, top ballast, can go it to death, and then leave it alone. So we got that installed, and given that we're building all this to run steam trains, the first train wasn't actually a railway steam train, so that's the first user of the level crossing as a traction engine, which was quite fun. So basically, sleepers notched out to fit around the housings either side of the rail with ballast in between as work to treat. Once it's been run over for a few months, it's absolutely rock hard as the ballast. Next, part 2 of materials from Darlington. So Ben knows this story as well. So next round of CV. So 1.5 CV9.25 turnouts came out, stacked reasonably sensibly alongside. We turn up, we have 2 high-ab trucks and another flatbed to come and remove the materials. And the day before, or 2 days before we turned up on site, the other contractor, Balfour Beatty's doing the station, decided they were going to dump loads of spoil in the access to, decided we were going to dump that pile of spoil exactly where we needed to get in with the high-ab to lift the panels out. So the plan was to get the first high-ab truck in there, lift these panels out, and get the second high-ab in this gap here, lift those panels out, and then there was only these ones that were a bit awkward. Top right photo there. It was a bit awkward. We ended up putting scaffolding tubes underneath and de-stressing rollers underneath, and we dragged them out lengthways to a point where we could actually get in to lift them out. So second visit, because of the limited access, we turned up with, so this was Corners transport station, and they brought their tracked high-ab machine, so a Gecko machine. So this will be useful to some of the people in the room that are still active in the industry, because they are massive reach and they fit in very, very confined spaces. So if you've got a really awkward lift to do in a confined space, that little tracked high-ab is absolutely fantastic. So it comes on the back of a truck on its own. So it's quite expensive to get it, but given it was so difficult to get the S&C units out, the plan was to actually drive that onto the adjacent line, which was under possession, drive it up the track and lift it out from there. But the site supervisor didn't want us driving, so we ended up doing the drag it out on scaffolding poles in the end. So all good plans. And then they went straight back in track as well. So we, again, hey presto, instant turnout with a few days, lifted the panels in, obviously with flame cut rails in the middle. We had to replace the closure rails in the middle, but that took about a day to replace the rails. So we got an instant turnout, and that gave us the connection to the 1861 shed. And again, you can see the drainage in there. So we finished off, fully connected up, we could start moving trains. So on Uber deliveries, that's my McDonald's arriving on site. Actually, Uber, that's there. London Underground Electric, whatever they're called.
You got a ticket for that?
Luckily, we're not in there where and also, we to drop ballast, we needed to have a little engineering train. So this is the jury that had been in the under protection of DRPS for the last 40 years, not been fired up for 40 years. Started first time, not run. Obviously, that's charge the batteries and put some diesel in the down the chimney, whatever they do. I don't know what they do, but started first time. So this is literally the first year anywhere at Darlington. I might have to stop this because it goes on for about 2 minutes. You see, he slows down when he gets to the S&C because he was a bit nervous that my S&C building capability. I'll stop there. That keeps going through ages. If we have more time, I'll play the rest of that. So the final combination of network connection, which I'll talk about in a moment, that was delivered by Network Rail Works Delivery, and completing the run round loop, so the red element next to the 1861 shed in there. So the third visit from 507th. So this shows how much work we've got done over the course of the year. There's 2 photos at the north end of the site, 1 year apart. No track at all in the top photo, and it was pretty much finished at the end of the third visit there. So network connection. So we were tying into the end of this siding. So the right photo, you can just see the buffer stop in the distance. So just there. So plan is remove the buffer stop, connect in. Buffer stop is the end of the movement authority. Replace the buffer stop with the stop and away instruction board, which is the end of movement authority. Really easy. proved not to be the case. Also, the condition of that track, it's supposed to be live network rail asset, live infrastructure. There's no way you want to run a train on there. The sleepers were very rotten. So the plan was to spot replace about 60 sleepers or renew 9 panels of track. Given the adjacent renewal was about 300 mil higher and all the ballast tipped over the sleepers of the siding, doing spot sleeper replacements would have undermined the adjacent track. So the decision was made by the route asset engineer to renew in serviceable materials. So at that point, given the challenges we had with network rail asset protection and trying to get them the letters onto network rail infrastructure to put that last panel in to create our network connection, did a deal with the ramming that I did the design for him for free if they put the extra panel in as part of the works. So as part of that, we got the track physically connected for the network connection. So that's the works going in, and you can see that's where we laid up to 1 panel short of the gate. They actually needed to not put that panel in anyway because that was their access into the site. So even if we wanted to, we couldn't have installed right up to the gate. So I was putting over the course of 1 week of midweek nights. They actually did it in 3 nights, I think. 9 panels of track, all in commission. That's it. So I mentioned limited movement authority. Swap a buffer stop for a stop board. Dead easy until the signalling route asset engineer gets involved. Who then points out he's got lots of non-compliances in existing signalling systems. So those boards stayed bagged for 9 months before somebody had the common sense to commission it. So we still needed a full suite of signalling drawings to show that nothing had changed, so the testers could go out and take a bag off a stop board when there were 0 changes to the method of operation or to the signalling system in the area. The biggest waste of time and money, as in a 6-figure sum, that I've ever known. It's absolutely ridiculous. So getting out of sight, just stopping away instruction board for leaving the site. You get permission from the signaller to progress to the ground signal. You can see immediately behind it, and then from that point on, it's fully signalled. The last portion, finish off the south end of the site, get across Otley Terrace Bridge. So the bridge wasn't particularly well looked after when it was a network rail asset. So getting the way beams out.
To be fair, it didn't have any track on it. So.
No, but it was used as the maintenance access. So asset protection, we're going mental about how do we make sure that you don't drive over the bridge, and saying, well, we are driving over the bridge, but we're driving over the trough. We infilled 2 of the troughs with hardcore and drove over the troughs, which are the load-bearing part of the bridge. Network Rail or British Railways had spent the previous 40 years driving a 28-ton truck over the deck plates in between the troughs. So they're okay to do that, but they won't let us do something fairly sensible. So, which you can see there, that's the 2 troughs there is where the track going over the bridge. So way beams were actually surprisingly tough to get out.
I can see that.
They're coming out in really short shards. So the method that we ended up working out was to chainsaw a wedge out the middle to lift the wedge out, and then the two other sides would release relatively easily. So yeah, but then again, we've got our aged volunteers taking the way beams out. Stiffness, we had no ground bearing assessment, so we wanted to make sure that the bearing stiffness coming off the way beams for the formation, so we didn't have a soft spot coming off the way beams. We dug down an extra 400 or 500 mil and had 400 mil of hardcore, compacted hardcore, either side of the bridge, just to make sure that we didn't have a soft spot coming off there. So that was the activation before we put the.
Who signed off you could use that bridge?
Not fully signed off yet. It's installed and used. Currently, so it's got a full structural assessment. I'll show you the install of the bridge. Being done to a design that ASPRO still haven't signed off yet. The council have taken liability for the operation of the bridge, given that if something happens, they have the liability anyway because they've got the lease. So they were happy with the design. ASPRO weren't happy. Well, they were happy with the design. They just kept paperwork loopholes. Oh, you now need to fill this in. You now need to fill that in. And the way ASPRO work is they'll ask you one question. You'll answer that question, and they have a month to then ask the next question. And when you're trying to turn it around in a short period of time, so we ended up building it and commissioning it without Network Rail approval. So I was getting grief. So that's the first turnout we put in. I was getting grief for 18 months saying that design's rubbish, that doesn't line up with the bridge, that's never going to work. Okay. And the other side was even worse. So the other side lined up with the two right-hand way beams. So the original plan was to have use both the troughs that we were using and the right-hand one. So those troughs are at 1 in 8 angle apart. The plan was to have the turnout this side. That was the original plan. That was the original land transfer. That was the original concept. But the cable route is literally there. Okay, so there's no way we were getting a 2 metre clearance to put a trough and a railway in there. So the fence runs down this trough, and the cable route is immediately, network rail cable route is immediately the other side of the fence. So that's a good example of where we had to change the design. Originally, we planned on using going across 2 spans of the bridge. In hindsight, it was a good job we didn't, because that would have been twice the problems. So yeah, getting stick, that doesn't line up, but it does actually, because it made sense as to why we did that. So this is putting the way beams in. So the inclination, right, left-hand photo, you see the right-hand trough. Every metre along the bridge, we put lats that set exactly the right height. And then we had a very high strength grout that we levelled off, and then we could just put straight edge across between the lats that we put in. So that entire blinding layer was within a millimetre of its design position for the full length of the bridge, which meant when the way beams went in, so the trough already had a roughly 200mm concrete layer in the bottom. We added to it with a high strength grout, which was 0 at the south end of the bridge. In fact, we had to scabble out the concrete slightly just to get it low enough, because we had to get the rail level down to deck of the bridge. Otherwise, the way beams at the other end would have been very proud of the troughs. So we scabbled out at this far end, and you can see that you can just see in the left-hand trough there is no grout at the far end. It's the existing concrete. And stepped up as we came through, which meant laying the way beams was easy. So we didn't do the traditional chipping, pea gravel, get it right, put the way beams in, pour the tar underneath it. We got the concrete absolutely spot on. Put an adhesive layer in, and literally glued the plastic way beams to the concrete, and then infilled. Oops, I was supposed to have a video on it. Infilled with. The usual bitumen down the sides. That's the tar boiler going. Sounded like a kettle going. And then we just weighed the way beams down with concrete sleevers, just so they weren't going anywhere, and it squashed the adhesive. So the adhesive basically put on with a heavy duty tile grout adhesive. So they castellated scraper, just pulled it through, and then put the way beams down on that, and it filled all the gaps. And the portion at the ends where you're on the abutment walls, we had a layer of polythene between the adhesive and the way beam, so that it make up the difference, but it wouldn't adhere, because obviously the bridge expands, but the abutments don't want to go with it. So it's perfectly supported, but it can slide if it needs to. And that's the finished way beams, and that's the first proper train going over it. And again, the driver was exceedingly nervous. So the council on side with his orange jacket, we were all going, will it go over the bridge or not? We were more confident than that, but we were taking the mick, because they didn't know until after we went over. We pretended that it wasn't, could have collapsed under the first train. It was RA10 at 5 miles an hour, by the way, was the bridge assessment for the bridge.
Is that right?
It's in amazingly good condition for its age. It's roughly 1910 is the structure. Loading spur, so we've got a little ski ramp going there, so an extra 500mm high. So you've got your rail deliveries, the back of the truck. Basically, you don't have to put the ramp to come off the back of the truck. You just drive straight up to the back of the end. And the idea, which didn't quite work, is that the gradient of the truck would match the gradient of the track. So you can literally just under gravity, just with the winch, just let the locomotive roll off the back. So the only piece of the only piece of P-way that we had to commission new was a 1 in 6 crossing. There was absolutely no way I was finding a 1 in 6 crossing anywhere coming out of an S&C renewal. We nearly did a Marchie House, the last crossing on the double junction that was originally getting renewed, that didn't. I had my eyes on that, but we ended up having to purchase have made a brand new built-up crossing, 1 in 6 built-up crossing, which meant we could get it to the correct radii that we wanted as well, because the top leg is a 150, well, it's 160 metre radius through the crossing, but then goes to 150 turnout radius. So interesting turnout, left-hand set switch off the straight, short length of curve. So the reason this is a 1 in 6, it's a a BV6. So it's a turnout off the straight, but then it turns into a contraflexure turnout, which means because the radii going both ways, you can get steeper angling. That's because we had to get the geometry to line up with the bit that I just said didn't line up. So that curve does that, but we had to keep the turnout radius going very, very aggressively, because to get the separation for that running line to provide the 20 metre diameter or 22 metre diameter for a turntable, we had to fire off that quickly off to the side and then get a length of straight before a turntable. We had to put in a 150 metre radius, so it was really important that we kept that little bit going. So that's us building it. So that's the switch from Darlington, and then the remainder was built to suit, and that's the turnout when it's finished. So that's the tight radii going off to the left, and that's the geometry. It does actually look quite nice now it's finished. But that's the left-hand track didn't line up because it was deliberately not lining up. It's all about the curve from the far right-hand side all the way through the bridge. 150 metre radius. How do you gauge widen on concrete sleepers? We couldn't afford to have gauge widened base plates and getting new timbers, so we gauge widened with G44 concrete sleepers. So how do you do that? You swap the insulators round. So G44 sleepers are designed for 1060 rail. So they have an 8mm white insulator either side. So to make 113 of 1056 fit that, you've got your blue and your black insulators. So you've got your bigger insulators on the outside and smaller ones on the inside. If you swap those round, you get 6mm of gauge widening. If you do that on both rails, you get 12.5mm of gauge widening. Then if you cheat and put some white ones on the outside as well, you get an additional 2mm on each side. So just doing that in steps of doing one rail then the other one, we got the gauge widening on that radius, and then brought it back into 1435 gauge on the straight, just by swapping insulators at the strategic locations. Not tamped yet, looks horrendous, but that's that tight radius curve. And I was very jealous. So the last helpers, so rail support services, came up for 1 week just to help us get finished because we were desperate. We had a tamper turning up, which I'll show you in a moment. But they had this lovely bit of kit. We've been breaking our backs for months. Until the rail was cut. It was brilliant. Noise, we lasted quite well. Every Sunday we were out on site making loads of noise every week. Lasted about 9 months before the neighbours actually got pissed off with us and started complaining. There was one neighbour that just complained every weekend. The council were actually very good because they came out, assessed us. We were making efforts to keep the noise down, and they just turned around and said it's just workplace noise. But I can't remember the noise order. But if you're working midweek or a Saturday morning, you don't need one. But Saturday afternoon and Sundays, you're supposed to have something out with the council. I can't remember what it was. Then desperate attempt to finish, so we needed to tamp the site. So we got horizontally, it was really good. Vertically, it was between 25 and 50mm low through the site. So getting the top ballast in through the site, we borrowed a dogfish, and then with the jury, we're going through and tipping topstone, which is a lot quicker than using ton bags with the going through. We used the ton bags around the S&C. It was a little bit easier, and then filling in where we had shortfalls. And then we got Volker's. Well, we had to pay for this one, 30 grand for Volker's beaver tamper to come up for a week. This is the road delivery tamper. So it comes in by road, obviously. The truck comes in at an obtuse angle across the track. The tamper has legs that come down. It lifts itself up in the air. It has a little turntable that goes down onto the track in a minute. It pivots itself around and lowers itself onto the track. It's really good for road delivery and this sort of small volume work. So they tamped the entire site in 3 days, most of it in 2 passes. They didn't tamp it to a design because it was good enough horizontally already. I was happy it was there. It was just the levels. We hand packed every 5 metres little lumps in the track, and it smooth lined it. So it took all the high points and then levelled out everything in between, just smooth lining it. And it broke down, so they ended up using our shed to fix the tempo. And that's the finished product. So we had our first train arrival. Just steam train. And you're going to get bored of this, so I might have to fast forward it. So I mentioned the stop board's been bagged up for the 9 months since it was commissioned to bring trains in. We've been bringing trains in and out through possession. So Works Delivery had to keep the T4 of the siding, and every time we passed the train, they had to come out on site, remove the protection, and let the train through. So that's why the train stopped there, because that was at the start of the T4, or whatever T4 is called now, possession of the siding. Fast forward again. The Works Delivery putting their banner up, wanted a bit of advertising. Breaking the ribbon. That's quite a big deal for the A1 Steam Trust to be able to bring so it's a mainline steam locomotive that does all the rail tours, being able to bring it in and out by rail. Bringing it by road, even though we've got the loading ramp, it does massively stress the frames on the locomotive, so really bad for them. The ability to bring the loco in and out by rail is a big deal. So that's it in the site.
Next to your RIV.
Next to my RIV, so I like the RIV, obviously.
Where do you keep that? In your back garden?
The missus didn't know about it for about 12 months after I bought it. So we had some VIPs turn up. So Rishi Sunak, when he was Prime Minister, was actually quite an interesting visit. Duke of Edinburgh in the middle, and when locomotion number 1 came in, it had Guy Martin on board, so he was coming in. He's exactly the same in real life as he is on the telly. He was calling. He met the Duke of Edinburgh. And he was calling him mate and dude while he was talking to him. It was actually hilarious. Yeah, don't park in the wrong place on site. It's not advisable. One of our guys got rather irate and it got moved. Darlington can be pretty at times, maybe not all the time. Accidents. That was literally the only accident we had. We dropped a rail and crushed a track gauge. It was actually because we propped rails on those rubber blocks and it fell off. It was interesting. It was quite difficult keeping 70-year-old volunteers in a safe position while doing work and understanding what is safe and what is not safe, and understanding what is an exclusion zone around the road railer. It was a constant. They were just forgetting it all the time. You were constantly having to look out for them before even looking out for yourself. And that particular instance, when that rail fell off, it was like a massive slinky. It went sideways about a metre before it stopped. It just went, blah, blah, blah. And I'd already told people, because I wasn't happy at them putting them on the blocks in the first place, everyone keep out of the way, because that is dangerous, and that's what happened. So that never got done again after that, at least not on that many blocks. Site as it used to be, so some very, very quick before and afters, just to show you how much work we've done over the course of a year. So it was 18 months, but nearly all the work was done in the course of 12 months. So I'll flick through these. So Otley Terrace, that's just north of Otley Terrace, the old scrapyard site. It passed the 1861 shed. Up end. We have the forest at the north side. That's probably one of the biggest differences. So it's gone from a forest to quite a nice, decent looking railway, and then up past the rolling mills at the north end. So, just volume of track. So, not really of interest to this group, but there's different volunteers. The RPS put in the majority of the volunteer work. The Army, between them, was about 20%. The older volunteers did most of the lighter work from the A1 Steam Trust, with very little input from NELPEG. Unfortunately, they were not particularly interested in helping. So there was about 14,000 hours of volunteer time and about 2,800 hours from the Army. So it's,
how many of yours? You're not on the pie chart, James?
I'm quite a lot. That's about it. So everything got finished. Nick of time. The Tampa tamped the site 2 weeks before the bicentennial celebrations, when everything was open to the public and there were numerous trains, locomotives brought in for the Titans of Steam. And that is it. Questions?
Thank you.
I've got a little video to put on while we're having questions, but it's just locomotion number one running. Oh, it won't work because I've no internet, so you saved. Sorry.
Question, yeah, question. So yeah, open the floor to some questions from the room firstly.
That's most of them. Is there a drainage outfall? Where's your outfall?
Not currently. So we are putting 2 soakaways. So we've got metre cube mesh boxes that we're planning on burying. We're going to put 2 on the site. One to intercept the water halfway down the site, and the other one, more importantly, is for the water not to get all the way to Otley Terrace Bridge, and to have the soakaway before you get to the retaining wall, that's the wing wall that's adjacent to, because we don't want to be obviously surcharging the retaining wall. So not yet is the answer. We've only had 1 bout of rain that was strong enough for the water to actually get as far as Otley Terrace and start pooling. But we do definitely need to get it sorted before next winter.
The big one for me is safety assessment certification.
Say that again slowly.
Safety assessment certification. Did you ever go through it?
For running trains?
ORR?
The ORR came out to visit, and they were extremely ambivalent to anything we were doing. As long as we had our own safe system of work and safe management procedure for what we were doing, both from a building the railway and operating the railway perspective, they were remarkably not interested.
Wow.
It will be
So
when
no-
it goes wrong though.
If something goes wrong, they will be.
Normal safety certification for anybody.
They have not been interested. They have only signed off. They've not come out and inspected anything we built. They have only assessed our quality systems to say that we have done it properly and we've inspected it properly.
It's a depot rather than being a full-on heritage railway classification would be.
So we're building.
I was thinking, yeah.
We're in the process of building a short 25-metre long platform, which isn't built at the moment, so we can run train rides. We've got the foundations in. It's currently got scaffolding platforms. They've been running trains up and down in half term, so they just finished this weekend, just gone. So they had 1 carriage and a little steam loco chugging up and down. Not over Otley Terrace Bridge, because not signed off yet. We're not allowed to run passengers over it. So
you are using it for the public?
They are running passenger rides, yes.
Right.
I'm not involved in the train operation side. So a lot of the volunteers, well, the A1 Steam Trust run mainline steam operations anyway, so they've got all their procedures. And a lot of the DRPS guys are rail freight, so they're mostly GB rail freight, so they've got a lot of operating experience. But I'm not at all involved in how the safety systems for running, which has been an issue. They've subcontracted out to Green Flag something. Green Dragon, yes, Green Dragon to produce the operating. So it's been they've actually commissioned somebody to do that independent.
Yeah, on one of your early shots there on the way beams, I noticed you had rail joints on them. Was that just a temporary thing, or is that the finished
We
article?
have 1 set of fish plates on the bridge, which are 3 metres from the end of the way beam.
5 miles an hour.
Again, low speed. There wasn't a lot else we could do other than getting them welded. So we couldn't avoid having the joint there because of where the S&C was.
Would want them on your way beams if you welded.
Well, we were initially worried and had to check whether or not you could use liquid bitumen with the plastic way beams. Apparently you can. They're absolutely fine, but we did have to go away and check that. So that was the other element we had to pay for. So Network Rail use a company in Stockton whose name I forget to install all their way beams for most of the country. So we had to pay their guys to come out and do that.
Anything else from the room? We've got one question online, which is from Glenn Melvin. Whilst the organisation relies heavily on donated materials and recycling, which is great for the environment and sustainability, inevitably the works created some waste, excavations, etc., and disposal of old bulkhead track. How were these materials managed in a similar theme?
So redundant rails and base plates were scrapped in, basically scrap value, which was helped pay for the materials. So any steel work that wasn't usable, that was past usable life, did go off to scrap, which is interesting because obviously scrap merchants taking rail materials but it has gone from a rail origin, so they are reasonably covered in that sense. The rotten timber sleepers, we had a friendly contractor that came and removed them for us. I won't go any further. What happened to them after they were removed? Burnt in a controlled way, I think, is the official. Went to incinerator plant. It's fuel.
Okay, that was the only question I've had online. So
Spoil was all council related. Most of it was contaminated waste. There was quite a lot of asbestos on the site, which is why when it was getting dusty, we were all getting quite nervous because not that specific part of the site, but they did find a small amount in the area that we were working at one point.
Who wants to ask how much it cost?
So it cost approximately £300,000 to install what would have cost Network Rail about 15 million quid.
Well done. Fantastic. Yes. So
Ben's going to shoot me because Ben always hates my presentations because they get longer every time. That one was 179 slides.
given an hour and 35 minutes of an hour slot. So hopefully everyone's still online.
I hope you enjoyed it.
James, that was fascinating. Obviously, I've been involved in a number of ways, and you tend to use my involvement as examples of where things went wrong. And
It's your example of you helping us get out of something.
So I suppose you started with the fascinating history of the site. So I think that grounded the presentation well. You talked about your challenges in producing 22 versions of a design, and as we went through the presentation, we now understand why. Because you designed not only to fit the site, but to fit the materials you had to hand. And you gave us loads of examples of where you overcame challenges. So putting the base plates the wrong way around, using insulators differently to gauge wide, and the work you put in to work through the railway differences and using the Palisade as data. It's all fascinating. So some really innovative, just common sense approaches to things. There's loads of learning there, and I'm going to get you to write something so I can apply learning on how to effectively dispose of redundant materials from the main line in ways that make them usable for the people that are their future owners, because we are terrible, as you know, at making things easy to cascade to others. So there's definitely some work to do there.
We tried various things. We even tried sending, just let the train go back to Whitemore. Just please don't chop it up. Chuck it in a train. You don't have to put it to one side because that adds time to your possession. Just chuck it in a train, but at least chuck it in the train hole if you can. Even that didn't work because it ended up at Whitemore, and most of it went straight off to the scrap merchants from Whitemore before anyone had managed to put it to one side. So there was various challenges there as well.
But when you listed out what you did get in the end, I thought, okay, well, we did actually.
We have done exceptionally well, particularly the stuff out of Darlington. I mean, there's no better recycling than being really able to recycle and reuse something a mile away from where it came out of track. So that was really, really good.
So, very lucky. On behalf of the 9 of us in the room and the 7 people online, thank you very much for your presentation, and congratulations again in achieving what you've achieved. So, thank you.
Thank you. To close out the meeting now. Next meeting will again be hybrid at the same venue. So here at the Spark, it's Nexus and remote on Teams for those who are unable to attend after summer recess, and will be the first Tuesday of September. And again, the speakers to be confirmed. So please keep an eye out on the RailEI site.
Obviously, the committee are going to spend some time over the next few weeks looking at what the programme looks like for the year ahead. If you've got any suggestions at all around what you want to hear, then feed them in. You've got 3 committee members online: Phil, Roger, Glenn, Chris in the room as well. So the people to.
Yes, sorry, section business. Quiz at Carlisle Saturday the 20th. Phil mentioned we've got a team.
Phil, can we bring you in for that one, please, on the quiz in Carlisle? Have we got a team sorted for that?
I haven't sorted a team. No, I'm available.
I always go and sometimes answer the question correct.
It sounds like you've got
Do we have to do I don't know what we have to do for that. Do we just have to put our names forward, or
Just turn up with the coffin.
confirm between yourselves who's going and then be there on the day.
There's a good lad from London that comes as well. Put him in because he's got just more knowledge than we have.
should we just use the WhatsApp group to confirm that then, the details?
Yeah, I think, and just confirm to the organising secretary that we are actually fielding a team, so they can print off sufficient quiz papers and everything else that goes with it.
There's a rumour that there might be a Yorkshire section team joining from afar as well, so I'll see if I can confirm whether they're planning to attend or not.
I'm playing cricket.
And it's not James or myself.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right. Well, thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks
Thanks very much.
Thanks,
Thanks all. Thanks, James.
How far is it from Newcastle to